can moderate, and some foods you have to leave off. And this is why when my boyfriend, who is not keto, buys food for the house that is of the sort of treat variety, I let in the ones that I don't care about. I don't like that flavor. Buy all you want. Fill the cabinet. It's not going to call my name. But even a moderator might have a food that they have trouble controlling themselves around. And this also can apply to things beyond food. But that's why, we make different choices. But it's what you are mostly. And so the problem with 100%, the problem that I find abstainers can run into is that they find 99% just as much of a failure as 0%. So has this happened to any of you? Oh, I had one fill in the blank. I might as well keep going. I had a slice of cake. Why not the whole thing? Because I'm either on or I'm off. These are the two choices. And because these are the two choices, you'd be an idiot, honestly, to not. Would you like this much or this much? Go with this. Take it all, right? But just a reality check for people is that's not how your body works, right, in terms of weight gain and loss. It's not like, oh, you had one cookie, fill in the blank, right? We're putting those 300 pounds back on you. Like, it doesn't. Our brain says it does, but it doesn't. So am I trying to say that being a moderator is better than an abstainer because of that tendency we have to see any slip as failure? That's not actually what I'm saying. It's a kind of a lie we tell ourselves. Moderators kind of do that thing too, where it's like they go out of control sometimes. It's not only abstainers that struggle with making meaning out of slip-ups, right? But what I am saying is that you need to challenge your thoughts. You need to challenge your thoughts because as an abstainer, you need to make sure that you're not using the term abstainer to then be a shield that says, well, this is just who I am. I am someone who, give me an inch and I'll take a yard. That's actually being a human. And yes, you recognize yourself in the behavior. That is the first step. You do need to recognize, yeah, I do tend to do that. That is totally me. But then you have to say, that is what I do. That is not who I am. Because we are not our thoughts. We have thoughts. The problem with things that are in our head, right, is that we identify with our thoughts. Because what makes up our personality but our thoughts about who we are, how we react to things. And so it's natural that we would make this leap from being like, oh, I am an abstainer. I see things in black and white. I'm 100% or I'm 0%. So this is the loop I have to live in. The good news is, even if there's a song playing in your head, you don't have to sing it, right? You can get that earworm, you can get something going in your head. It can be in there, but you don't have to take it on as a lifelong personality trait. You can change. You can affect your behavior. So I call it a losing mindset, right? If we're trying to lose weight, it's a losing mindset. These are some mindsets that we can get into, that we can get stuck in. And then once we're stuck in those loops, we're just going to be on the failure cycle. And so these are the things that we have to challenge. The first thing we have to look at is, are we coming at life from a fixed mindset? Do you know what a fixed mindset is? Do you know what flexible means? The word flexible? Hopefully. Fixed is kind of the opposite. So something is fixed in place. So this doesn't mean you have fixed your mind, like it used to be broken and now it's fixed. This is the opposite of flexible. as in I cannot change. I am fixed in place. I am rooted to the ground and I cannot move. So having a fixed mindset is one of those things that tends to make us not successful people. Now, this is kind of interesting because very naturally intelligent, achieving type people have a tendency towards a fixed mindset, but they fight against it because the opposite of fixed is flexible. And when you are flexible, you have more options. And I will go into the winning mindset in a later slide, but having that fixed mindset. So the way that a fixed mindset person would answer a question, let's say somebody with a fixed mindset failed a test. They would say, I'm bad at math. Someone with a flexible mindset would say, I didn't study enough for that test. So one is I am, and the other is I did. So who you are versus what you do. So looking at those things differently. Does that sound familiar with people's approaches to dieting in their past? Right? I failed at my diet. I suck at dieting, right? I am bad at losing weight. Fill in the thoughts in your head. But it's rarely, well, I didn't take a very thought out approach to doing that this time, did I? Right? That's not the first thought that tends to get into our head. Having a lot of shame. Sometimes I put things on a slide and then I'm like, that was kind of obvious probably. But carrying around a lot of shame. And for a lot of us, I don't know if you agree, but I had a lot of shame about both my weight, my body, and my inability to be in a body that I approved of. Because that felt like something I was doing wrong. And because of that, I had a lot of shame around the whole topic. Like any angle you approached it from, I felt shame. And that was shame about what I ate, shame about what I looked like, shame about how why could I be successful at these other things? Why couldn't I be successful at this, right? And so there was just this sort of shame bundle wrapping me up around the whole topic. Short-term thinking, right? I mean, it's like before and after is a good example of this, right? There's a before, which is now, and then at some point I'll be an after. I'll be fixed. I'll be better. I'll be done. I'll have lost the weight. It'll be over, right? Then from then forward, I'll be living this great life in this body that is totally just a fantasy about somebody else's life, and right? It's this after thing. I'm just going to let you in on a little something. There is no such thing as an after if you're still alive. You are a during. There is a before, and there is a now. Tomorrow will be different than today, but that short-term thinking convinces us there's a finish line. There is no finish line. There's a casket, not to be morbid, but there's at some point it will be finished. You're not there yet, and you have to give thanks for that right now, right? Because while there's always time, you want to enjoy that time. So you don't want to be, I'll put it off forever. That's not the kind of, no finish line I'm talking about. But your life is going to keep going, and you're going to have to live it. And so there is no after, there is a during. And then there are also short-term activities we might engage in, like crash diets, right? Crash diets. That is like the definitive short-term thinking. Are you going to live this way once you lose the weight? Oh, no. This is way too restrictive. I couldn't do this forever. I can only do this for a little while. This is exhausting, right? Well, now I'm not saying you don't have to take some actions to lose weight that you wouldn't be taking when you're maintaining your weight long term once you feel like you've reached a good spot with that. But I am saying that there are some things that we do and take on and a mindset we can get into where we aren't thinking, is this sustainable, right? Is this something that can happen? And I'm going to say, as a coach in this arena, this is very common in the weight loss arena. that there are things going on. I see things going on. I'm like, what's going on over there? Like, what? You know, people tell you about their plans or whatever. And just be honest, some people who do talks just like I'm doing might be like, here's a great strategy for you for this thing that's going to, I'll be like, like, you got to think about the sustainability. You got to think, what is this going to look like in an ongoing fashion? So the other thing, the mistake that I think people make is that they make the number on the scale mean everything. It means something. I'm not trying to say, give it up, don't care about it. But does it really mean everything? Should we make it mean everything? And what harm are we doing ourselves by making too much of that one thing? Because I don't know if any of you have ever had a major health problem, like a major health problem. Maybe you were in the hospital, something was really wrong. You got frightened about your future in some way. For the most part, the number that I weighed on the scale at that specific point didn't really matter to me anymore, right? How I was going to survive this, how was I going to live, what would my functionality be? And is weight part of that? Absolutely. There's a point at which I weighed so much that my functions were hampered. I couldn't walk very long. I couldn't reach something if I dropped it. You know, like I worried about the strength of chairs, right? Like there were things, and there were ways that my health was impacted by how much physicality, you know, how much body I had. But for the most part, when push came to shove, weight wasn't the most important thing. It was a part of, but not all of. And so, but we can get into loops. We can get into mental cycles and mental loops where we make it mean everything about our journey and about who we are. And then all out or bust, right? This is kind of a related to short-term thinking, but the idea that, you know, if you're not giving it all 100% effort and you're not like just pushing yourself as hard as you possibly can, then you're not doing enough. That it has to be your number one priority at every moment of every day. So this is the what to do instead portion of this talk, which is instead of having a fixed mindset, to have a growth mindset. So a growth mindset is one that has the idea that you can change, that you can affect your life, that you can grow. It's a very useful, definitive term, right? So it's kind of interesting that we have this fixed mindset, right? Because we're like, I really want to change my body. I want to be smaller. I want to weigh less. And then we're like, but I'm bad at that. It's like, well, you think that you can change your body. Why don't you think you can change your mind? If you're going to be able to change your body, you are going to need to be able to change your mind. So the first thing I would say to everyone here is anytime you catch yourself making meaning of a failure of some type, ask yourself if you're in a place of growth mindset now, right? Hey, this didn't go as well as I wanted it to. What am I going to do about it then? How am I going to make that better? What am I going to do differently next time? Having the assumption that as long as you're alive, you can fix it. You can work on a problem. It's never closed. The book isn't closed. Shame. Catch yourself when you say things like, I'm going to be good today. I'm going to be good today. I'm not having that blah, 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 blah. Because what's the opposite of good? Bad. There are no good foods. There are no bad foods. There are foods that serve me, and there are foods that don't serve me right now. They're not good or bad. It is an inert substance, right? It is a thing. This clicker is not good or bad. It's a clicker. If it stops working, it's something to work on, right? Does it need batteries? Does it need, like, did I remember to turn it on, right? It may be something I can identify as a problem, something to work on, but it has no soul. It's not good or bad. And you, my friends, are neither good nor bad. You are delightful, complex people. Every one of you does things that support your journey in a way that you want to support it. And sometimes you do things that you don't understand why you did it that way, but it doesn't mean you're a bad person. So catch yourself when you say, oh, I was bad, right? Or I'm going to be good. I made a decision that in hindsight does not support where I want to be. Next time, I think I will make a different decision. This is also where I'm going to bring up the word cheat. I would just like you to do a thought experiment. Have you ever, the only thing I've ever been able to come up with is sleep eating. But have you ever eaten something other than a bug and like been totally unaware you ate it? Just checking? No, not really? Okay, all right. So how are you cheating on your diet, right? Like you know what you're doing. I'm confused about the term. You made a choice, you made a decision. In hindsight, perhaps you wish you hadn't made that decision, but it was your decision. So I would also caution you to remove the word cheat from your vocabulary in the context of food, right? Because if you're cheating on a test, you're trying to get away with something, right? You're trying to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, right? You don't want your professor to know that you cheated on that test, right? Your body knows what you ate, and so do you. So who are you cheating on, right? So let's stop using that terminology and instead say, I made a choice, and next time I'm going to choose something else. Or I'm okay with that choice. It went fairly well. It was worth it to me. I have made a choice. The thing we're trying to avoid, in case you haven't caught the picture here, is any place we stop being adults, right? We often feel, I don't know if it's like that our parents taught us how to eat, but do you ever feel like you're in a child-parent relationship with your own diet? But I don't know who the parent is there, right? Like it's like, oh, I'm gonna go and get some little things out of the cabinet and nobody will notice. And I'm like, I did that when I was 4, right? I mean, I'm not kidding. My parents had to hide things from me because I would go find it. And they were like, I wanted a cookie, So that, but somehow that orientation can persist. That idea that we're getting away with something. But you are the adult in your life. I'm sorry, it's terrible. It is terrible I'm like, is there an adultier adult here than me? Right, but there isn't, unfortunately, for yourself. So having shame around these topics, having a good, bad, cheat, all those kinds of languages we use that kind of turn us into a child, ultimately lead us to give up responsibility for our choices. And let's talk about the short-term thinking. So instead of, this is some of the ways that we get into trouble, I would say. We expect that motivation to last, right? That surge, right? Maybe you're on Instagram, right? And you see somebody and you're like, wow, their before and during picture is really inspiring. I want to be like them. I want that for me. But that feeling doesn't really persist. And what ends up happening is you go back on Instagram like a week later and you look at the same picture and you're like, I suck. I'm not there yet and I should be there already, right? So you can't you can't rely on motivation. You can only really rely on systems, right? Motivation, it's like you give it a push. You know, you're in your little cart. You say, can you give me a push? You know, somebody pushes you. And you're like, I'm not going to get all the way home in this push cart. You're going to have to, at some point, you know, get the foot out and start to move your own little push bike. I'm imagining my little niece on her, you know, the little bikes with the little, you know, one of those. I don't have a video for that, I should. Living diet to diet is another short-term thing, right? Like, I'm going to be on a cruise in a month. I want to be thinner by then. I'm not guilty of this at all. You know, I want to, there's a wedding, there's a vacation, there's a thing. Diet to diet to diet, right? Not, how do I want to live my life? It's, oh, there's a thing coming up, right? Diet really hard, right? Like I'm going to like PSMF this thing, right? I'm just going to like eat as little as possible until I can't do it anymore. Or other things, like, and this is going to be controversial, and I'm not saying there's a problem with the tool. I'm saying there's a problem with how people use the tool. Fasting. I'll just put it out there. I think fasting is amazing. I think fasting is wonderful. I think some people have an eating disorder and they pretend it's fasting. So the problem, I will say here, is not the fasting, but how one uses it. And so it's important to think, is this a lifestyle? Can I live this way? Or just be a little honest, because this is how I lived a lot of my life, and it might resonate with some of you. So I use myself as the example, crash test dummy over here. I was so disgusted with myself all the time that any means were worth it to be different, but I always failed because you cannot hate yourself thin. Not long term. Sure, you can touch down on, you know, you can get there, but you're not staying there. Because if you don't take the time to work on the relationship you have with yourself on the way, you're not going to be able to stay there. Because most people who get heavy in their life, it was a soothing technique. It was a way that they comforted themselves. It was a way when they felt empty, they could feel something like something that felt like love, right? We have these associations around food. And if you punish yourself thin and you don't develop other self-soothing tools along the way, what is going to happen when you get there and now you need soothing because something else happened? Food is just going to come right back into your arena. So I think it's really important that we're learning to live a different life, not that we're just, when I get to a size 4, I will think about being a good human, but until then, that is my one and only goal. So the weight of the weight, right? The hyper focus on a scale number is a place where I feel like people go wrong. Who's had that experience? Has anyone ever gotten into like a hyper fixation about the weight loss? Anybody? Nobody? All right, some people. All right. So that place where you're like, 10 more pounds, just 10 more. Once I get to 10 more pounds down, I'll buy the clothes, I'll do the thing, I'll whatever. And if you can't get there, like, okay, I'll go first, right? I lost 60 pounds and I got stuck. And then I remember being so proud of myself for losing 60 pounds. But when I was stuck long enough, all I could think about was the next 40. It was like just in my, all the time. Just the beat of my heart said 40, right? In my head. Because I could only focus on that. But there is more to you than the number on the scale. So I don't think it's a surprise that we optimally want to be metabolically healthy individuals. And it can be really easy to forget that more goes into your metabolic health than the size of your body. It includes the size of your body. So there are some people that look metabolically healthy in bigger bodies, but what they do find is as they age, that healthy label kind of goes away. So some young people who are in bigger bodies, and I don't mean a little bigger, like a lot bigger, their blood work and their markers can look like very healthy. But they do find that as those people age, that tends to go away. So they kind of think you can be a young, larger, metabolically healthy person, but you probably, not everybody can be a older, metabolically healthy, large person. So what goes into metabolic health? This is actually a page from the book that Ken Berry and I wrote called Common Sense Labs, so you can read it if you want. But basically, the markers generally known about metabolic health, I have it in a little bit easier to read. So having blood pressure under 120/80, a fasting glucose under 110 milligrams per deciliter, an A1C under 5.4%. As a woman, a waist under 34.6 inches. These are the official. Triglycerides under 150, HDL over 50. For men, it's 40. BMI under 25. So by the way, that last one, the BMI, it's not listed on the official criteria, but the waist is a similar one. But I put that on there because most doctors will also include a BMI under 25 as being metabolically healthy. I have my own, right? My own metabolic criteria that I like to see for myself and for my clients. So pretty much the same on blood pressure. Fasting glucose, I like to see it under 95. It's pretty, it's split the difference. A1C, I want it under 5. Why do I want A1C under 5? You might ask. There's much, much better long-term health outcomes when you get it under 5. Now, the difference, I'll send Chris a study that kind of shows this so that we can add it to things. But the difference is if you look at all-cause mortality, so your dyingness likelihood, right? It takes a steep rise after 5.4. So there's no doubt that being above 5.4 on an A1C is bad news, and the higher it is, the worse that news is. But there is still improvement when you down below 5. So it's not as steep a trajectory, but it's still a little bit elevated. So there does seem to be good evidence that getting your A1C under 5 is a good idea. Now, I look at things as big deal, good idea, and smaller deal, good idea. Getting it under 5.4, big deal, good idea. From there, there's still some tweaking to be done, and I would prefer to see it under 5.0. I don't like the cutoff measurement of waist to height. As a tall woman, I feel like it puts me in a bad spot. And then the little ones, they have it easier. And I know that you can't reach things on tall shelves, so it's like a trade-off. But, fair is fair. So I just say your waist circumference should be half your height or less. So if you're 5 feet tall, that's 60 inches. That means your waist should be under 30 inches, right? It's a very simple metric. True for men and women. But I always like to say that as women, if you've had a baby or been a heavy person, your belly button used to be like up here. Hopefully it's still somewhere above here at this point, but so when you do the waist height, be mad for a minute, right? You're gonna do this with your hands, right? I told you, whatever, right? So where your hands go, that's the waist measurement. Because a lot of doctors, generally men, will say at the belly button, And I'm like, do you know where my belly button is? We will not be discussing where my belly button is, all right? So because what happens is if your belly button drops from where it used to be, your hips are in the way now, right? So now you're measuring the butt and I'm like, you get the picture, right? It's bigger. It's bigger now. Anyway, so you want the waist. And I finally had to explain this to a doctor who kept saying belly button. He was finally like, oh, that makes sense. And I was like, yeah. Skin, all right. But for men, the belly button, because most men don't have, again though, but if your belly button has dropped because you were very heavy, probably not very pregnant, but very heavy, then go for where it seems like it makes sense where your waist once was. I want to see trigs under 100, preferably under 75. I want to see HDL over 60. I want to see, and these are some new markers that I'm adding to the list. Fasting insulin under 7. I want to see your C-peptide under 2. And I want to see, I don't care what your BMI is, but I want to see your body fat in a healthy range. And for a 40 to 60-year-old woman, that is the range I am in, somewhere between 24 and 34%. Why do I care more about body fat percentage than BMI? Because The Rock is obese, right? If you have a lot of muscle mass, your BMI will be artificially elevated. And it's not how much your body weighs, it's how much body fat to muscle mass you have that really matters. Now, depending on who you ask, they'll pick different ranges on body fat as what is healthy. For example, if you ask some really horrible idea of medically induced weight loss programs, they'll put it very low. And there are just increasing health complications when you get above a certain range. So, and for men, you can usually, for men and women's body fat percentages, just subtract 10 from the woman for a man. So about 10% less for a man. Does that mean you can't be healthier lower? No, but if you want to have a lower body fat than the range I've given here, then I would expect you to be a very athletic person. Because your lower body fat at that point is not due to being extra low fat, but rather extra muscly, right? So you could be healthier at a lower range. My personal goal for myself and my clients is if they're somewhere in this range, up to them from there. Is there a body fat percentage where they would get so low they could damage their health? Absolutely. Is that easy? No, not at all. So, you don't accidentally do it. I'm just gonna say. Why am I bringing all of this up? How many of the things on here are weight related specifically? Not most of them. Is weight on here in a way? Yes, right? So I'm not saying, I'm gonna come out with another controversial statement. I am not a weigh whatever and you can be equally healthy believer. But I am if the only thing you care about is what you weigh, you are not winning at life here. So it is part of the picture, it is not the only thing. So in those places where you want to tell yourself it's about the scale, like, I'll give you an example. I recently had to talk down a client who stopped taking a medication because it was causing water weight retention. Is that I only care what I weigh choice, or is that I care about my health in general choice? That is, I only care what the scale says choice. People do wacky things when they only care about what the scale says. And sometimes they make choices that put them in long-term harm. They might take a medication that has a lot of side effects or get a surgery that isn't right for them, right? I'm not against medication and I'm not against surgeries. I just want to put that out there, like there are appropriate uses of all of these things. But if you don't think about all the consequences of taking a medication or having a surgery, because you can only focus on one thing on the number on the scale, you're probably making a decision from a not well-informed place. All right, I've gone way long, I think. How about, no, we're okay. What time we start? We're good? All right. I thought we started at 5, and suddenly I was like, whoa. We've been talking a while, Kim. All right, no. Okay, so I wanted to raise this topic. Nice and easy versus kind and responsible. So there is power in the right kind of pressure. Has anyone met a person who was nice but not kind? How does that feel? Creepy. It feels creepy. It feels yucky. But have you ever spent time with someone truly kind, but who would tell you the truth? Who would engage in a dialogue that was a little uncomfortable to you, but you also felt safe with them? I hope everyone has had at least one friend like this in their life. Someone who's truly kind to them. What does kind mean? You know, when I think about kind, someone who is kind, they care. They care about how you feel. They care about your well-being. If someone's nice, they're just trying to get away with something, right? Yeah, polite and everything is important, but the difference between nice and kind. So I was thinking about this earlier because I was thinking about the right kind of stress. This is a graph having to do with allostatic load, by the way. So allostatic load, you can just think about it like the sum total of all the stress you carry. So that's now going back to what we talked about, good stress or good and bad, we kind of tend to categorize things as good and bad stress too. Like starting a new job is stressful, but if you wanted the job, you tend to think of it as good stress, right? Working at a job you hate, bad stress, right? So we have these ways of categorizing things. The reality is, though, your body doesn't categorize that way. It just knows it's under stress. And so there's only so much you can carry, which is why it's important to know where optimum is for you. There's an appropriate vibration. I'm from California, so I can say that, right? The vibration, right? And so have you ever been underextended in your life? I don't want to say this, that you haven't really been asking enough of yourself? Only me? Just me. All right. No, but that's anxiety and depression. That place where you're like, why? I don't want to take a shower. I don't want to get up. Everything feels super hard. What's weird is it feels a lot like overwhelm. But it's actually underextension. Nice and kind, right? Or rather, I'm sorry, nice and kind. Right? That when you ask just enough of yourself, when you're pushing yourself to your edge but not over your edge, when you are fully extended, you are fully expressed as who you are as a person, like your schedule is full but not packed, right? When you are in that place, you are being kind to yourself. So putting together the right approach to weight loss for you is kind. Because I spent a lot of time in my life being fake nice to myself when I weighed close to 300 pounds, thinking that a piece of cake was being good to myself. Thinking that self-care was a pedicure, a massage, and a piece of cake, right? Or all the cake, whatever. But that's not being truly kind. Truly kind, in my book, is actually going for a walk, right? Extending myself in a way where I feel good about who I am and not like, I'm a good person, but I'm doing things that make me feel like I am part of the solution for my life, right? I'm not at its mercy. And so I just want to bring up that being truly kind to yourself means asking more for yourself. Asking, like, what would my life look like if I were fully expressed, fully extended, at my capacity? Asking of myself, what can I bring to the table for myself? Because we'll do it for everyone else, won't we, right? Like, what do they need? What can I do for them? How do I give them more? But do we ask that of ourselves? And that's where I wanted to put it out there. I haven't talked about this kind thing before, so it's a new one. We're debuting it here. But like, what would being kind to you look like? I mean, I think we've experienced this if you have kids in your life, yours or someone else's, right? But someone you have, sort of someone that you could say, I'm proud of you without it seeming weird, right? Like, there are things we would ask of them that they might feel like it's a little hard, like, I don't want to clean my room, right, or whatever. But you do it because it's the right thing for them. You're not telling them to clean their room just because you want their room to be clean. Well, maybe that too. But you're telling them to clean their room because for them to be the kind of human that they want to be in their future, to be proud of themselves, that's a step they have to learn. That's an action they have to take. And it's the same thing for you. Are you asking everything of yourself that you need to fully extend out of the underload, but not go over into overload and find your right balance? And it's a good thing to do a little bit of a life audit every once in a while and say, like, oh, where is there room to add and where maybe you need to take away? Like, if there's, because again, there's only so much your stress bucket can hold. So is everything in your stress bucket serving you? The job I hate. Well, I kind of need it because I need the money, right? Is there another way that I could achieve that goal without this stress? Could I get a different job? Could I do something? So are there trades that you could make here, right? So the thing I wanted to say today is, as we've been going on this little circuitous journey, is to say there are thoughts in your head that aren't serving you. There are actions you are or aren't taking that aren't serving you. Being the responsible adult in your own life, are there changes you need to make about how you talk to yourself and about how you plan your life? Because that's who you are, that's how you live. How you live is going to be who you are tomorrow. Because to do the work that you want to do in the world, like, imagine you showed up for work for a meeting, right? And you're like, this year we're going to hit this revenue goal and we're going to do this other thing. And your team is like, okay, how are we going to do it? I have no idea. But we're motivated. That's not going to do it, right? So just like in a work environment, to achieve a goal, you need the systems. I'm going to need this department's going to do that, this is the plan, this is the system. You're going to need to create the system. So this talk wasn't to tell you what to do. It was to ask you, do you need to do things that you're not currently doing? And if so, how are you going to get from where you are now to where you want to be? And for me, what I recommend doing quarterly, I came from a corporate environment, I can't turn her off, right? A quarterly review. And it's not just like, what's the number on the scale? I like to talk about the 3 F's. How do I feel? How do I want to feel? How am I functioning? How do I want to be functioning? And what is the form, right? So it includes the body. It can include goals, not just weight goals, not just number on the scale. Maybe it's, I want to be able to deadlift my body weight. I want to be able to pick up my grandchildren. I want to be able to go to Costco by myself, right? Like so how do you want your form to work? But it also counts your feelings, your emotional, your mental, all of it. And then how are you going to put those 3 F's together? So I sit down and I'm like, what are my 3 F's? What's going on there? And so once a quarter, every 3 months, people, in case you don't know, you do this little review with yourself. And if the number on the scale is the only thing on there, you need to go back to the drawing board, right? Because you are more than that. It might include that, but you are more than that. So that's what I wanted to talk about today with you guys. And I know this was a pretty broad-ranging topic, but I wanted to put it out there that sometimes we can get stuck in our own loops. And I just wanted to say, like, hey, hello, you don't have to stay there in that loop. You can get out. So again, I have the Common Sense Labs books. We can ask questions about blood labs, health markers, whatever you would like to talk about. I am yours until Chris kicks me out. So please let me know what you'd like to know about.
All right, now we've got some time for questions. If you guys have any questions, we've got Joel and Christian can come around and ask you. We'll give you the thing.
The speaky thing?
The speaky thing. So does anybody have any questions for Kim?
No. Does the audience have any questions?
I haven't seen. Okay, so Purpose11 Nana wants to know what is the body fat range for over 60?
Oof. I believe it goes up by about 1 to 2 points. So it's just like a little bit scooched up the scale. So I believe it's either 25 to 35 or 26 to 36.
Okay, and Miriam, who's watching from home, wants to know, can you tell us what the 3 F's are again?
Oh dear. Yeah, form, feeling, and function. Form, feeling, and function. So form, the body, right? Feelings, right? The whole of your emotional system. And then function. So is like metabolic markers. Is my body working? Am I ill? Like, what is the function?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you say to check in quarterly, are you saying you only weigh yourself?
Oh,
once a
good
quarter?
question. Good question.
Because that would be a struggle for me. I'm not going to lie.
No, I wouldn't say that. Some people, I think, should weigh themselves daily. Some people should never weigh themselves at all. So there's a big range in between. I don't know where you fall on the spectrum between those two things. I'll tell you, I have some clients who just cannot get into a healthy relationship with the scale. They can't do it. We tried this, we tried that. And for them, I'm like, all right, let's do some scale alternatives. Tight pair of pants, measurements. There are different ways to like monitor your body, your form, if you will. Other people actually find considerable freedom in detaching the scale number from a thing that means something about them, and some of them do that by weighing themselves every day. And those people sometimes will be like, well, that's interesting. I was up 2 pounds since yesterday. Now I was up 7. I didn't gain 7 pounds of body fat in 24 hours. And because they start seeing those little changes that would be physically impossible, like not impossible for the scale to be different, but you can't gain 7 pounds of body fat in a day. I'm just going to tell you it's physiologically impossible unless you have a rare condition that I don't yet know about. Right? There might be some medical, but an average human. And, but you can gain 7 pounds of water overnight real easy. So sometimes when people get that daily weigh-in, they start to be like, why am I making meaning out of something that is this meaningless? And so for some people, it's almost like immersion therapy, that they're like, I have now been doing this every day and it stopped being a problem for me. So to answer your question, I think probably once a quarter would be too infrequently. I would say somewhere between once a month. I would say probably one, if you're using the scale at all. Like I said, some people, it's just a no-go. But if you're going to be using the scale as a metric, then I would say once a month is probably minimal. Because let's think about it this way. You don't show up for your quarterly review without checking how the month has, or the quarter has actually gone for you. You need to bring data in to that meeting. Like, you don't just show up to work for your quarterly review. You have to have worked the whole 3 months for that to actually have useful data. So.
I did see that there are a couple of different scales that you can weigh yourself every day and it won't actually show you the information.
Right.
It just squirrels it away.
And there are some that do a good thing, which I actually really like. I think one of them is called Happy Weight. You weigh yourself every day, and then it just gives you the weekly average once a week. So it like averages it out for you. So it kind of takes the fluctuations out of the equation.
Kim, thanks for being here.
No problem.
My wife and I agreed that her progress would be measured in clothing size.
Yeah.
She lost 120 pounds before bariatric surgery.
Okay.
If we had to do it over again, I would have recommended keto. She was taking exogenous ketones, raspberry ketones. After the surgery, she lost another 100 pounds. More than I weighed on the scale this morning, just to get down to 300 pounds. Most scales don't go well over 300 pounds. And the scale was never her measure of victory, but she did manage to lose those 220 pounds. And yet she still wasn't satisfied. So there's that mindset thing again. And I really like your approach of the 3 Fs.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
As you get older, is it more, am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now you can. As you get older, is it more important to check other things that are in your book, like the ApoB?
Oh yeah. Okay. So the list I gave you of metabolic markers, those are not the only things that I keep track of. Those are the metabolic things I keep, like the sort of things that are either directly related to the way that you eat or so there are other things. There are many other tests that I would say people need to get. There's a list of annual labs that I think people should have, and they're testing other things. Like, you want to get a CBC, a complete blood count. You want to get a metabolic panel. You want to get a complete metabolic panel is what I was trying to say. You want to get your lipids. You want to get your TSH, like what's your thyroid doing? So there are many things. You want to test things like iron, ferritin. You want to make sure you know what your liver markers look like. So there's a lot more to test than just what was on that list, because there are other things going on in your body that you want to know about. And so I think, and Dr. Berry and I both agree, that there is a good reason to get an annual lab work done, probably from the time you're 30 on. It's not just when you're over 40 or 50 or 60. Part of the reason that you probably want to get these tests done annually from the time you're 30 or in your 30s is in part because if you only take tests when you're in ill health, how will you know what not being in ill health looks like on those lab markers for you? because we are all somewhat bio-individual. And because of that, these tests have ranges. And we won't know if you're at the top of your range or the bottom of your range or totally out of your range if the only time you ever took the test was when something was wrong. You actually want data showing you what your blood labs look like when you were healthier. So I think it's important to get these labs done at least every other year, but they're called annual labs for a reason. Yeah. But does more go wrong when we get older? Unfortunately, yes. I don't think that's a shock to anyone that is unfortunately the way things go. But we get, if not wiser, at least meaner. I don't know, something, I don't know. But anything else? Yeah.
So what's your favorite creamy flavor?
What's my favorite creamy flavor? Well, that is a good question. I'm a big fan of the creamy. Being here at Keto Chow, I'm going to say that I think I'm really looking forward to getting home and making a creamy with a chai latte. Because I think that's going to be really good. I haven't done it yet, but I think that flavor will lend itself very well to the creamy.
Tea bag for the
Oh,
water.
okay.
Like a chai tea and
Yeah.
That's
All right.
it's delicious.
All right. Yeah, I think that would be good. And it just depends on my mood at the time. I've been experimenting with more things that involve cottage cheese in the creamy, and that's been going well as well. It can act a bit as an emulsifier. You have to blend it. Tip for everybody, if you're going to use cottage cheese in the creamy, don't put whole cottage cheese in the creamy. I know it pulverizes everything, but apparently not cottage cheese. So you have to put the cottage cheese in your food processor or blender first. So it should look like ricotta before it goes into the creamy. Little tip. Not charging for that one. Don't ask me how I know.
Hey, Kim, can you tell everybody how to make your super, super intricate peanut butter bread that has so many ingredients?
Yes. Step 1, your mixer of whatever mixer type you're using. So you can do this in a KitchenAid stand mixer, or you can do it with a hand mixer. 285 grams of water, 60 grams of Keto Chow egg white protein powder. Whip until you have a meringue, right, until it's very fluffy. Add a packet of peanut butter Keto Chow and 2 tablespoons of allulose. You need the allulose so that the bread isn't sticky. If you don't add the allulose, the surface of the bread will stay on your hands. If you add the allulose, it makes it sealed. So that's why. It's not for the sweetness. Then beat 3 eggs, put that in. Get it combined. That is the whole recipe. It is that complicated. And then spread it out in a quarter sheet pan. Bake it about 22 minutes at 325. This is on my website, by the way. Look for protein focaccia. I have a savory version. I just gave you the sweet peanut butter bread version, but the method is the same. So you can, if you want it to taste sort of like a very puffy pancake thing, use the maple flavor Keto Chow. And so I designed this recipe to work with 1 serving of Keto Chow. Now, if you want to make more of it, obviously you can double the recipe, but it's nice in that it comes out like a flatbread, but a puffed up, thick enough flatbread that you can slice that in half and have 2 sandwich bun pieces. So that's very good. And I have a fantasy, I've not yet done it, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna make that peanut butter one, and then I'm gonna slice it, and then I'm gonna turn it into a layer cake with some peanut butter and yogurt frosting in between the layers, and then I'm going to see how that turns out. So that's on my list. So for people that don't know, because I think sometimes it's helpful to know, I started on my keto journey 85% fat keto, because that's how we all did it back in that day. And then after a while, I switched, and now I would say I am more of a moderate fat, high protein eater. But I work with, people that I do not believe that weight loss, even keto weight loss, is one size fits all. We all have different things. I am not the person who's going to be like, well, that I used to do, that's terrible, and now what I do, that's the only good way to do it. I don't believe that. I think what works for you is what works for you, and that there's a spectrum of what works. So most of the recipes I make tend to be more protein forward, but there are always ways you can adapt them to be more high fat as well. Okay, anything else from the peanut gallery?
Some people. Oh. Anyway, some people want to know what your favorite flavor of Keto Chow is, since we're doing bald-faced
all Keto Chow all the time.
Right.
That's a hard question. I will say, and I answered this question the other day for somebody who asked, I don't do many shakes, which might seem weird that I'm here at Keto Chow where they're all about the shakes. But let me explain. I am not a person blessed with enviable metabolism, right? I am hungrier than the weight at which I would desire to be would indicate I should be. That's confusing. I have to eat less than I want to a lot of times. Just the reality. Because of that, I have to employ high satiety strategies. There are other people in the world who tend to have an appetite that is lower than the amount of food they need to eat, right? A lot of times this happens to people maybe when they're elderly, or this happens more to men than I find than to women, but maybe they want to bulk up in the gym, but they have to eat way more than they want to because their appetite just isn't that high. So viscosity is a satiety strategy. So one of the things I teach often are, what are the satiety strategies? How do you feel satisfied with your food? What kinds of foods make you feel satisfied? So for me, chewing increases satiety. So I like volume and I like chewing. So shakes are lower volume and, well, I guess they're not always lower volume depending on how you make them, but they're less chewing, right? So I'll make a Keto Chow into a creamy, right? Because you have to put a spoon in your mouth and you don't really chew it, but that thickened, it being thicker, it actually has been found to be more satisfying. But for someone who gets full real fast but needs nutrition, something that's thinner, like a shake, I find very useful. And so just on that spectrum, I'm over here with the thicker foods. But so I love that Keto Chow exists so that you can find your right place on that spectrum. But that's why I mostly use, this is a very long way to answer this question. I mostly use Keto Chow in baking because I want to chew. And I find it superior to almost every protein for baking because of its profile as a dairy protein. Baking with whey protein is not to be recommended. You need that casein in the mix. And also some of the things that are added to Keto Chow, like acacia fiber, are very helpful, I find, for baking. So anyway, long story short, never with me. I love to use the apple pie in baking. It works really well for a lot of things. It's not overwhelming, but it's got a really solid flavor. The snickerdoodle, also one of my top faves. The peanut butter, one of my top choices. So, it just kind of depends what I'm doing with it. But those are really solid ones that I use a lot. I think that might win an award for the longest answer to a very direct question.
So we got one last question from the peanut gallery. What's your favorite meat? And hi from Australia, by the way.
Hey, Australia. My favorite meat, did you say?
Yeah, like your favorite cut.
Okay, this is going to be a crazy answer. So how long can I make this take? No. How many words can I use? We're paid by the word, right, Chris? Yeah, all right. I used to love ribeye more than anything. And occasionally a nice thick cut English short rib was also very high on the list. I will say, of the animals, I'll go with cow. But I have, over time, as my approach to eating has changed, really fallen in love with, no one kill me, flank steak. I love a properly prepared flank steak now. And although an occasional ribeye is still good, you know, any given night I'll probably be eating flank steak. So there you go. No judgments on that, yeah. But yeah. That's it. But I like all meat except, I wish I liked fish, but I don't like fish. Don't like it. I am like a 4-year-old. Like, no.
Sardine sauce for you?
No, not gonna be happening. No. I can't even let my boyfriend open a can. Like, he likes all sorts of fish. Probably did not forward thinking to fall in love with a fisherman when you don't like fish, but he has many good qualities. He can't even open a can of sardines or anything if I'm either in the house or plan to be in the house in the next 4 days. So, yeah. So, yeah, no, not, but I will say that, like, I am slightly embarrassed about that. I think it would be great if I liked fish, because I think it is a very healthy food.
Do you like any seafood? Like shrimp?
I like shrimp just fine, and I like Dungeness crab. I like lobster fine, but I feel guilty eating lobster because I don't love it, and I know some people love it. So I kind of, if I'm like, this is going to waste on me. I think it's okay. But crab I actually really like. But yeah, no, yeah. But I think, you know, once you hit the 40s, you're just like, I don't like it. Sorry. I won't pretend anymore.
Keto changes what you like, though. Your tastes change.
I don't think that will change. It's like a reaction. You know how some people cilantro tastes like soap? Fish tastes like yuck. And
So you're saying there's a chance.
Right, yeah. I explain, like, okay, craw, this sounds very odd. I am not pregnant at all, not at all. But imagine a pregnant woman sense of smell.
I have it.
My whole life like that. So, yeah, troubling in the world. And so, yeah, no, not gonna happen.
You didn't have COVID.
I did not. Apparently, I should have, but I don't. I haven't apparently gotten it ever. So, mostly it's because I don't associate with people very often. So I like, you know, I like wearing a dress to these things because otherwise I am just in pajamas, just the rest of my life, fully on my sofa in pajamas. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So I guess that's it, unless anybody has
That's
anything
it.
else. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I hope. Thank you for coming. And I hope that, you know, if you take anything home from this, it's that you be a little kinder to yourself. Talk to yourself like you would talk to someone you love. Absolutely, because you're stuck with you. It's the reality. So, all right. Thanks, guys.